Hi, welcome back to It's So Friday. We had a little bump there with our technical difficulties, but we're back. So if we have any issues with our Wi-Fi, just give us a moment, we're working on it. Hopefully the rest of this will go very smoothly. Today we are going to be working on a quilt block called Stars on Parade, and this is a free pattern on Robert Kaufman's website. You can just go in our pattern section and it's right there. It comes in 3 color stories, or you can make up your own. And this is a really great one to wow your friends because it looks so complicated, but we're actually just going to be using reverse applique to make this really beautiful seamless circle, and just some very simple geese for the rest. So let's get started. First things first, this takes a little bit of materials. So aside from your fabrics, you are also going to need freezer paper. You can get freezer paper at any local grocery store. When I went to the grocery store, they only had this giant box with 150 square feet. So I have a really significant box of freezer paper, but it's always good to have in your stash. It's good for stabilizing your fabric and for making circles like you'll see in this tutorial. You're also going to need paper scissors and of course fabric scissors. You will need a ruler. We're using our Omni Grip ruler. And you will need a marking pen that is either water soluble or heat soluble. We're using a heat erasable one. So for this project, we are going to be using our Superlux poplins. We have 49 colors of these poplins. They're absolutely beautiful. The hand is thinner than a cone of cotton. It kind of feels like glass, very smooth. You can't feel a lot of resistance from the different yarns, but it's a really nice substrate to work with, and it works really well for quilts, so you have this really soft, wonderful quilt when you're finished. So for this, I've already pre-cut my pieces, and so you should be, I'm going to move my box of freezer paper now. So I've already cut my pieces to the size we need. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the circle, because why not just jump right in? So you're going to need to find your background fabric, which is this outer section. And this piece is a 6.5 inch circle, and then you've cut a 6 inch square from your freezer paper. And the first thing you need to do is, before you do anything actually, you're going to take your freezer paper and you're going to take the template that you cut out from your pattern that you've already downloaded from Robert Kaufman's website, and you're going to just center this, kind of eyeball it, or you can take a ruler out if you want, but I eyeball it. And you're going to use your pen to mark on the paper side. So when you are looking at freezer paper, and it's hard to tell on a camera, but one side is more like paper and the other side is real shiny. I don't know if that comes across. The shiny side is the side that will adhere to your fabric when you iron it. Don't iron the shiny side. It is not fun to clean up. So you're going to just draw your circle. And you can use your soluble pen for this, it doesn't matter, because you're just going to cut that circle out using your paper scissors, not your fabric scissors. And you want to be pretty precise with this because you are going to need, you're going to be using this to make the circle shape. So if you don't have the template and you just want to kind of quickly try out the technique, you could also just grab like a bowl from your kitchen, or yesterday I did some really tiny ones with like the bottom of a spool. So any kind of circle will give you that. You can do the same effect with it, just in different sizes. But if you're going to make this quilt, you probably want to use the template. That way you don't have to figure out all the math. It's already done for you. Now the centerpiece that you just cut out is trash. And now what you're going to do,
you have a trash can.
I do have a trash can, is you're going to take your background fabric and you're going to iron your freezer paper to it so that you have about a 1/4 inch on all the sides. So I'm just going to real quick iron that. And again, just make sure that you are not ironing on the shiny side of your freezer paper. It will stick, it will not be very fun. I'm ironing off over here. I don't have an iron helper today. So now that you have your circle on here, you're going to use your pen and you're going to draw about a 1/2 inch all the way around from your freezer paper. And it doesn't have to be perfect. If you really want it to be perfect, you can absolutely take a ruler and like really, really go for it. But you don't have to. So now that I've drawn about my 1/2 inch circle, what you're going to do then is, using your fabric scissors this time, you're going to cut on that circle line. So I'm gonna just real quick. And again, if this doesn't end up being a perfect 1/2 inch, it's okay. Not the end of your quilting world. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments, and Yael and Arrigo will ask them over to me. And again, for any of you just joining us, we're making the Stars on Parade using reverse applique for circles. So now you have this circle where you have your freezer paper and then your background, and you have this nice hole in the middle. You can be like, hi. And so now what you're going to do is you need to cut little snippets and only go leave about 1/8 of an inch from your seam allowance, since you're going to be turning there, but you're going to just cut little triangles out like this all the way around. So I'm going to start doing that, and again, being careful to leave about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of your freezer paper. This is a really exciting Friday today, because it's Labor Day this weekend, so we all have Monday off. So we're all looking at a 3-day weekend, and once we get past all the traffic going home, it's going to be really fun. I have really big plans to stay in and sew. I might try making the new Roomy tank by Christine Haynes. Last weekend I went to try that, and I accidentally printed the wrong piece of the pattern, so then I couldn't. But I'm also going to try using my serger for the first time in like a long time, so we'll see how that goes. Adventures to follow. This can be a little bit of a time-consuming process, but don't rush it, and just kind of enjoy it. It's kind of fun. It makes a little bit of a mess, so
just a little bit.
It does. So it's good to have like a little wastebasket close by, or I have a thread collector that I can put all of the scraps into.
We're getting a lot of hellos, so hello to you all.
Hello!
Thank you for tuning in.
Does everyone have fun weekend plans? I hope everyone has fun weekend plans. I want to hike to Potato Chip Rock. That's a real rock. You can Google it. It looks like a potato chip.
Chris Roche says hello from Australia.
Hi, Chris Roche. We'll see you in 8 weeks. We ship to Quilt Market in 7 weeks, and we attend Quilt Market in 8 weeks, and that's when we get to see all of our friends.
Don't get too stressed out while you're using your scissors, please.
All right, so now we've gone all the way around, and we have this like kind of sprockety looking thing, and so this is the part where you need to iron, and it's not intimidating, but Yael is just going to move the camera this way. So, okay, so at this point, what you're going to do is you're just going to gently push back the clipped edges so that it aligns with the freezer paper edge, and just be careful not to burn your fingers, since we all know how unfun that is. And if you don't know what an iron burn feels like, then you're doing really well, and don't start. It's not fun. It takes a long time to heal too.
Can you rest the iron on the other side?
Yes. So, and when you first do this, you're going to have to go around a few times because it might not catch, and you have to be pretty careful with how you set your iron down. Otherwise, you're going to accidentally re-iron flat all the little guys that you just push down. So I'm going to do this again. And at this point, when the freezer paper is still on it, I don't want to spray it with water or flatter or anything like that, because I don't want, I don't know, I just don't want anything weird to happen there. But after I take away the freezer paper, then I will use some water. Oh, Enrica, can I have some water? Spray bottle. Okay, so now that you have your first initial kind of press, what you're going to do, thank you, is you're going to take off the freezer paper. Now, this isn't like glue basting, where when you've kind of ironed it shut that it's permanently on there. This comes off very easily. It's almost like a sticker, only even less sticky. And so you're just going to really gently pull it off, being careful not to stretch your fabric. And then lay your circle back down here. You have this is trash now. And I'm just gonna use a little bit of water, and the water makes it want to crinkle back in, but I'm going to just press my circles or my little clipped edges back out again. And just be careful that you're not stretching your fabric. This pattern gives you the exact size that you need, but if you're just doing it for practice, it's always good to also maybe use a piece that's a little bit bigger than you need, because then you can trim down. So now you have a pretty flat tabs pressed back, and then the front is a really crisp, clean circle. So we're going to go back over here, and we're just going to tidy our workspace a little bit, because I have these little snippets all over, and you don't need your template at this point anymore, so you could set it aside for the next block you do. And now you're going to take your circle background. So in this case we had a blue circle, and the one we're making now, it's going to be red. And it's actually the same size as your circle top. So you're just going to line it up, and just be careful not to pull the tabs that you've just pressed back so carefully to the front. So now you have this set here. Now you'll notice that you can see the tabs through, because our foreground is a little bit of a light color. So this is kind of a design element you can take into consideration. If it doesn't bother you, then definitely use the white. It's really pretty. It kind of looks like a sun. If it bothers you, if you were to use a darker color, then it wouldn't show at all. To get this to lie flat, and for the next step, we're just going to go ahead and use some pins and just set them in. Do we have a question about pinning?
Yes, we do have a question. Someone's asking.
You're asking.
Do you recommend pinning, or do you pin a lot, or you know you don't like to pin?
I don't like to pin, but I think on circles it's really important to pin, or on something that's kind of finicky that might shift around. If you are not just using a solid, but if you had something you wanted to fussy cut and feature here, then it's really great to pin, especially if you don't have as big of a piece and you want to make sure that you're fitting that motif or that piece of fabric right in that space. It's going to keep it from moving around. So I didn't pin a lot. I just put a few pins to kind of stabilize it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our machine and just edge stitch right along the white, so that it's just along the outside, not on the inside at all. And at this point you will want to use a matching thread. We're just using Orifil white, and I'm just going to go back and forth a few times. At this point, it can be really helpful if you have a machine where when you take your foot off the pedal, it automatically lifts your presser foot up a little bit, because then it just lets you shift just a tiny bit. But since I don't have that, you'll notice that just every few stitches I'm just manually lifting the pedal just a little bit, not all the way up, and it's just enough to let me move the fabric so that I'm getting a nice consistent circle.
Someone really likes your dress.
Oh, thank you. This is a previous Whiskers and Tails print from Robert Kaufman, and the pattern is the Emery Dress by Christine Haynes. It's a really cute, popular pattern that a lot of people have made, and it's really fun to see how it looks in all the different fabrics. If you have a knee lift for your machine, that also works really well for this. This machine actually does come with a knee lift. I just don't have it, and it's not as, well, I have it, but not right here. Plus it's a little harder to use a knee lift while you're standing, so that's okay. But if you have that option, that's also a really good option. And this is a slower process, but just take your time with it, because in the end it looks much better that it's neat and tidy. Plus, since you only have that 1/8 of an inch between where you clipped, Maybe I went just a little bit onto the red, but it's just a little bit. No one will know. Don't tell. Since you only have that 1/8 of an inch from where you clipped, you are trying to catch that piece so that it's keeping it tucked in there nicely. If you sew too far away from the edge of your curve, then you're leaving that piece potentially open to fall through and kind of fray. So now that you've sewed all the way around, we're just going to clip our little extra threads and unpin, and you'll see now that these pieces are attached. It looks really nice and clean in the front, and then in the back you can see that stitching line. So at this point what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cut a 1/4 inch, but only on the red one. So you're going to have to kind of pull these apart and just very carefully clip the red piece. Now it's not a big deal if you clip the little white clipping pieces that are the tabs that you folded back. Don't freak out if you do that, it's okay. You don't have to though, but you can. You just really don't want to cut through the front because then you have a problem. Then you have to redo your block. We don't want to have to do that. And this doesn't have to be a precise 1/4 inch seam, but you want to not go smaller than a 1/4 inch because you want to give the fabric room to wear down as you use it. My very first quilt, I didn't really know what a 1/4 inch seam was, so I didn't really do anything with seam allowances, and so the results were that my seams popped a lot. But you won't really have that problem here. So this one's like maybe a little bit thick. Okay, so now we have this piece on the back where you can just see it a little bit. It's a nice 1/4 inch-ish. And on the front, you have your little block. And then you can set that aside. So now we are ready to work on the second piece of this block, which is the geese. Now there are a lot of ways to make flying geese, and you need a geese unit that finishes at 3.5 by 6.5, unfinished. So not, yes. So you can use your preferred method for making geese. In this tutorial, we're going to use the 2 at a time, 4 at a time, 4 at a time. So you start with one large piece of fabric, and the directions here, it does say to trim, but it's also written to create that finished size. So you have to be really careful and really precise, otherwise it's kind of tricky. So it can be a little finicky. So you first take your large piece, and the next thing is you're going to take your, you have 4 of these colored units that will be the, they'll be the colored points on your geese, and the white will be the background. So you're going to line one up with these corners, and then you're going to line the next one up with the other set of corners. Then you'll need your marking pen and your ruler, and you're going to line up point to point, and you're going to draw the center line. And because you need this to be really precise, I'm going to pin it just a little bit, just to kind of keep it from sliding around. And just be careful when you pin that you are not pulling the fabric one way or another, because you do need it to be kind of exactly right there. Pin, pin, pin.
What song? Are you singing for us?
That's my pinning song. It goes pin, pin, pin. Okay, so now we have our line, and we are not sewing on that line. We are going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of that line. So if you have a 1/4 inch foot, you can use that. Just be careful that it doesn't pull the fabric when you're using it. And yeah, just be careful if you're not using a guide that you aren't wrong with your 1/4 inch. Okay, so we're going to just start and stop at the ends of the seam. Okay, so now we've sewn on one side, and we're just going to turn and do that again as well. And now you can unpin, and I'm always careful to put my pins back in the pin cushion. If you have a magnetic pin cushion, sometimes you just throw the pins and your magnetic pin cushion catches them, and then your friends don't know that you have that kind of pin cushion. And then they go to try and use your cutting table or something, and there's pins everywhere. Riga has a magnetic pin cushion. Now you need your rotary cutter. So I have my rotary cutter, and I'm lining it up, being very careful to cut on the marked line that I drew, not on, so it should be right in between my cut or my sew lines. So now you can see that I've cut, and now I have that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And what you're going to do is you're going to press these out with the seams towards the small pieces. So I'm just going to do that real quick off screen. And especially with these units, be careful not to pull when you're pressing, because it will warp your final geese unit. It kind of looks like a heart.
Oh.
So now you're going to take, you have 2 of these pieces left, and you're going to need to mark from point to point on both of them. So I'm going to just go ahead real quick and mark from point to point. This is actually really hard to see when it's blue on a blue mat, but
Betty's asking how you light your iron.
I love the Aliso. It is a wonderful iron. You get really used to it having the auto touch. Can you see it? Oh, it's really great. So especially if you have like arthritis or wrist problems and don't have a lot of strength in your wrist, as soon as you touch the iron, it automatically lowers to your ironing board, so you're not like lift, lift, lift. And as soon as you let go, it knows that you have your hands off. We don't put water in our irons though, so we just keep either like a spray bottle of water or a bottle of flatter. At home I have an Aliso, and I also use a bottle of flatter with it, and it works perfectly. So I'm a big fan. Yeah. Plus it has a little light at the top, and this is an important business. It has a little light on the top, and it blinks green if it's on and red if it's gone into sleep mode, so you know if your iron is hot or if it's started to cool down. And for me, the green light is really important because I'm always questioning if I unplug my iron when I leave my craft room. I never leave my iron plugged in, even if it's just to like go and get dinner real quick. I'm very paranoid about that, and so I like that I can just visually see, oh look, no light, I definitely unplugged my iron. So for me, that's helpful. All right, so the next step, now that I've drawn my lines, you're going to take your unit and you're going to line this up with this corner like this, with the line going right in between the other 2 blue pieces. And again, this needs to be really precise with this one because there's not really a lot of room for trimming. So I'm going to go ahead and pin again, on each side, and now you're going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of that line. But first I'm also going to pin this for the second one.
What if you were to use prints? Would it be right side facing down, or?
It would be right side facing down if you were using prints, but you would also want to take into consideration, this might not be the best method for making geese if you were using prints, because it's going to turn your print in all different directions. So if you're using something directional, I would go with a different way of making geese, maybe one at a time, so you can control which way your design is going. If you're using an all over and the direction isn't important, then absolutely this is a great way to do it. So now we're going to sew 1/4 inch on either side of the line. And again, just start and stop at the front to secure that seam. And again, so your finished unit should look like this. And I'm just going to put my pins away here, and now I'm going to quickly just sew the exact same thing on the other piece. And be careful if you're pinning which way your pins are going, just because if you're not paying attention, they'll stab you right in the fingers, and it's really not that fun. I know, because I've done that twice today now. It's been really exciting. Gonna keep you on your toes here, Robert Kaufman. Okay. So, now we are going to slice right on that drawn line for both of these. Just being very careful not to let your ruler shift anything. It's always good to make sure that you have a good amount of pressure on your ruler. I like to keep my fingers far away, like about 3/4 of an inch away from the edge, because I've already rotary cut my finger once and it's not very fun and I don't want to do it again. And then I lay my palm flat to make sure I have a lot of pressure. If you are like me and sometimes you're just going a little bit faster and you're not putting that much pressure on, sometimes your ruler can jump and that can ruin your cut, and then you have to try again, and it can be really frustrating. And now you're just going to press your pieces open, and you will have geese units that are 3.5 by 6.5 inches. Perfect. Look at that. Perfect little geese unit. Very proud of myself. Sometimes I'm more of a speed sewer, less of a precision sewer, and in this technique it really needs to be about precision, because any little like, oh, that's like close enough to the seam allowance but like not really, that will definitely show in these. So yeah, so now we have 4 geese units, and so we're basically at the fun part of quilt assembly where we get to lay out our block and kind of visualize what it's going to look like. So here we have all of our pieces, and we have our extra little background squares. We've got them all laid out. So at this point you're like, this quilt block is gonna look really good, and it's gonna look really good, so you just have to sew all the pieces together. I like to sew the center piece first and then the side pieces, and I like to make sure that my seams are going to nest. So like if I have one seam going under, then I have the other one going this way, and then when they sit together they butt up really nice and it makes it really easy. So we'll definitely show you that when we're at that step, but skipping ahead. Whoa. Looks like I did not do my math right, because my centerpiece seems too small. Let's see. Well, maybe this is too big. Let's see. Oh, this is just a little bit. Sorry, that was loud. Oh look, my geese, so good. So it does say trim up, but my last ones were too small, so I just didn't think I really needed to trim up. But this one is too big, so I guess we won't skip that step. We'll double check our own geese. Okay, this should be 3.5 by 6.5. And this one is just a little big, not much. So we're gonna trim that up. Look at that, that was like barely anything. Okay, next. Squaring up can be tedious, but it also is what's going to make sure that your blocks are perfect and fit together the way that they are designed to, so it is a good thing to do. I should not say that I ever skip that step, ever. I always square up, all the time. That one needed it, see? It's much better now that I squared up. It wasn't too small. Yes, it's always better for it to be a little bit bigger than too small. If it's too small, you are out of luck. You have to decide how you are going to remake your block at that point. 3.5 by 6.5.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to type them in the comment section and we'll try to answer them at the end.
This one is like much larger than its friends. I don't know what is going on with this guy. He's just having a field day. Okay. Whoa. Whoa. That was my ruler trying to escape, but I didn't let him. Okay. I know, my ruler was like, I don't want to quilt this weekend. I quilt all week. I want to go home. I said no. Oh, look at that. Okay. Now that we've squared up, let's try that again. Okay, so first piece. Oh, look, now it fits. It's like miraculous. Quilting by the rules. It works. Okay. And we're just going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. which I think is different on every machine. So you know your machine, 3/4 inch and go for it. Okay, and we have first side attached. We're doing pretty good. Let's do it again. It's always such a thrill when it matches. It's the right size and you're like, yes, didn't do that wrong on live Facebook video. Okay. You can press the seams whichever way you want, but I tend to feel like it's easiest to kind of press towards the points here at least, and I think that might end up doing it different the other way, but we'll see.
Sorry, Rigo was Snapchatting you with the filter.
I hope I'm the deer. Am I the deer?
No, you're the old man.
Oh, she didn't even use the deer filter on me. So now we have our centerpiece, and because we didn't do it wrong, our points are really nice and crisp, which is always really exciting to see. And now we are going to do the other side pieces, supporting pieces, with their little 3.5 inch squares, and normally at home when I sew there's not a lot of quiet space because while I'm sewing I also watch like murder mystery TV shows or something. I'm working through all of them right now. I've made it through like all 20 seasons of Murder, She Wrote. So now I'm going to press out this way, and that's going to make my seams interlock when I go to press them together. And you can double check this just by looking, and you like, oh, this one's down, so then this one needs to go up, because then when they're together and when I fold them on top of each other, they'll be going different directions. It's going to work better. Okay. Almost done.
Okay. Do you want to show them how you whistle? It's so terrifying, but also amazing.
It's really great when I'm in an elevator and not thinking about it. Sometimes I just whistle, like it's just like a thing that I do while I'm not paying attention. And I only notice that it's happening when people start going, trying to find out who's whistling. So now we are going to sew our block pieces together. And so we're just going to take these, turn them onto right sides facing. And at this point, I always like to pin just not like a ton of pinning, but just at your two seams where they intersect so that you know they're going to hit at the right points. Otherwise, if it shifts at all, it could end up looking like not quite like you planned it, and that can always be a little frustrating. So this just gives you a good guide to know kind of where you wanted that piece to hit. And when you're sewing, just be careful that when you get to your seams, that the bottom seam hasn't turned under or kind of flipped on you while you're stitching. Sometimes that happens. It like got snagged on the machine or something. It goes a different direction. So that's just inconvenient. Rude of that block. Okay, and then I'm going to press this side. Off camera. It's very top secret pressing over here. Okay, so now you can see that we have one side attached and it's looking really good at the seam joint, and you can see on the back that it's nesting kind of nicely. I didn't turn my seam allowances like a little windmill, but sometimes you do. And then it looks really pretty, but I never do that. Okay, and then we're just going to repeat that again on the other side. Pinning at our two intersections and stitching that last seam. And I'm stopping at my pins and just quickly pulling my pins out and putting them back in my pin cushion before I move on. And we're just gonna iron this last seam again, using a little bit of water. And voila! Now we have our finished Stars on Parade block. So in review, you can definitely do reverse applique seams. They're not hard, and now you have a video so that you can watch for moral support while you do them too. We hope that you'll all make the Stars on Parade block, because look at how fun they are. It was like what we did all morning. We just made Stars on Parade blocks in all these different color combos, and I made 2 of them, and Ariga, who is not a quilter but is a good sewer and makes garments a lot, she also made them, and she did a great job. So it's kind of a really great skill level for, or really great quilt for any skill level of quilter who's interested in trying a new technique. And in the end, you have a really interesting quilt. And so we did the red, white, and blue, and black and gray, but you can do this in any kind of palette. We have 3 different versions on our website if you just want some just ideas. And again, it's on robertkaufman.com, Stars on Parade. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy it, and then we'll see you next Friday.
Have a great weekend, everybody.